David Allen Miller in Cosmos. Checking on someone about music and other stuff.
Hi everybody, I'm here with one of my absolute favorite people in the whole wide world, the great American composer Joan Tower, at her home in Rhinebeck or Red Hook? Where are you?
Red Hook.
Red Hook, in beautiful Red Hook, New York, about an hour and 10 minutes south of Albany. And I'm glad you're safely ensconced at home. And I just wanted to check in on you and see how everything's going. Are you okay?
Oh, I'm having a ball.
You are?
Yes. I can compose a lot more, and I can teach from home. And I can have good, nice, long dinners with my husband.
That's really
and
nice.
Watch foreign films and practice the piano. I don't know whether you can see the piano.
Yes, I see it. I see it behind you.
And learn all my favorite dead composers again.
Oh, that's great.
I'm having a great time.
Right. I always think, well, composers are ideally suited for this kind of pandemic, right?
Exactly.
Although I must say, though, that...
We're used to being at home.
I know you are, but it's true of most composers, but I must say in the world of composers, you have always struck me as a wonderfully extroverted person. So is that true?
The ones you met were kind of nerdy types?
They were just a little quiet, a little shyer or quieter. They didn't have quite the joie de vivre that you have, I think. So,
well, I'm a performer too, and I love to perform.
I gather, yeah, but you're okay with the quiet side of yourself. You have these two sides, huh? So the alone at home side is perfectly fine.
It took a long time to get used to that.
It did?
Because I liked being out in the public performing, and having my music out front. And I think, it's an interesting thing about that. I think Beethoven and Bach and Mozart were all out front. They were performing, playing all the time.
Right, in that era, everybody was.
So their audience was always there, right there. They were very visible.
Yeah.
They weren't hidden somewhere in a university or something.
Right.
I think we've lost some of that.
Right, and you certainly are the exception to that, in that you're much more like those composers of an earlier era, because you started out really as a pianist, is that right? Or a pianist composer?
Right. Yeah, I'm really a performer who happens to compose.
Right. I was wondering about that, because your the position of your first orchestra work, Sequoia, one of my favorite pieces, that was written rather late not late, but it was written in middle age. It was very Brucknerian of you to start that late. But I'd always sort of made the mistake of thinking that you had just come to composing, but that wasn't the case. You'd written a huge amount of pieces prior to that, right? And then you wrote that after having written all sorts of chamber pieces. Is that right?
Well, I was playing a lot with a chamber group
that you founded, right?
And somebody came along from the American Composers Orchestra, which actually played a lot of living composers. In fact, that's all they do.
Sure.
It's an amazing organization, and you know that organization.
Sure.
Yeah? And so they asked me to write my first orchestra piece, and I actually turned the guy down.
You did.
Really.
Was it Franny Thorne or something?
I didn't feel.
Was it Fran Thorne, or was it Fran Thorne who asked you, or somebody else?
Francis Thorne.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And I said, no, I'm not ready for this. And he said, yes, you are.
Right.
And he persisted. And I thought, oh my God, I'm really not ready for this. I don't know enough about certain brass instruments or combinations. It was daunting for me to write that first piece. Absolutely daunting.
And it's quite extraordinary, because it's just still as fresh as the day it was written. It doesn't sound... It doesn't sound...
Thank you for bringing it out again.
I love it. It doesn't sound tentative in any way. Yeah, it's actually true. I'm really excited, because I made a recording with the National Orchestra Institute last year.
Right.
And that's probably coming out...
I said to you, do you know how hard that piece is?
Yeah.
And you said yes.
Yeah.
But these kids can do it. And
right.
You were right. I really didn't think they could.
We had been through it in Albany some years ago, and I remember it was hard but wonderful. And
the Pittsburgh Orchestra did it, and they complained a lot. I said, well, now if Pittsburgh's complaining, then this youth orchestra won't be able to handle it.
No, children are young.
Right,
young people are fearless. You know that. They certainly aren't children.
That's right.
They're great young professionals and professionals in training at that institute. But they ate it up. They thought it was fantastic and really exciting.
They were amazing. those kids.
Particularly the brass.
The level was just
right.
visceral.
The brass and the percussion in particular, not a fear in the room. Nobody was fearful at all. But so tell me, so had you always intended to be a composer, or were you just a pianist who then decided to become a composer?
I went to Bennington at 18,
right.
and they asked me to write a piece. And I said, okay, I wrote the piece, and it was so bad. I was really embarrassed. I said, I can do better than this. I can write a better piece. And so everything from then on was trying to write a better piece until this day.
Right.
And I got hooked because it's another way into music. And any way into music for me is like food. I'm just very curious as to how do you make it, how do you play it, how do you conduct it. I took up conducting, all kinds of things. It just gives me more insight into what music is.
So at first, did you consider yourself a pianist who composed? Was that initially what you thought of yourself as?
I still, well, I don't do professionally anymore, but I still think of myself as a performer who composes.
Which is so funny because you're always very apologetic about your pieces, and we all love them. And so I wonder, how does that work for a teacher? I hope you don't apologize to your students.
Oh, no. We don't talk about my music at all.
Oh, you don't? Well, that's clever. That's the way to circumvent that, right? Just don't even address your own music.
Right.
They don't ask? They don't ask about your experience with this piece or that piece? Or
No, not really. I pretty much keep my life out away from my students. They only get it sort of through the YouTube or some other way. If I have something done at Bard, then they notice that. But I don't like to impose my thinking or my life and music on them. Because they're very much into themselves and they're trying to write a piece. And so my job is to get into them and try to help them develop a voice rather than my imposing on them.
Right, so I just wonder, I mean, from your perspective, having taught for half a century almost, or
50.
Yeah. Is that
50,
right?
50 years.
50 years. You came to Bard in 1972, is that right? Or some crazy time like that?
Yeah, 72.
Wow. So in those 50 years of teaching, because to all of us who have never taught composition or studied privately, I mean, I certainly did it at college and all that, but had private composition lessons, I'm sure they look very different depending on who's teaching. Some teachers, I gather, just look at the score and mumble and say, I might change this or I might change that. And other composers are much more involved in teaching. But what is your theory or your philosophy of teaching, and what do you do actually physically in the lesson? Actually in the lesson.
I don't think you can teach composition. I don't. I think what you can do is, because it's a very, very, very complex activity, I think what you can do is be a kind of a traffic cop. You can say that's too high for the flute, or maybe that's a little slow for the trombone, and you can bring in your experience of what they're presenting to you. But I really don't think you can. I think it has to basically come from them, and then you can kind of help out based on your experience.
Sounds a little bit like being a therapist.
Well, yeah, I think any teacher is actually a therapist. Any
really?
teacher.
Uh-huh.
There's a book called The Talent Code. Do you know this book?
No, I don't.
Very interesting. You should check it out. It's about what is talent and how does it get developed. This guy went to 4 different countries to study soccer, tennis, soccer in Brazil.
Oh, I have heard of it.
Russia.
Yeah.
It's called The Talent Code. Anyway, one of the criteria is empathy. That you have a teacher who is empathetic, is coming from you as a student rather than from them as a teacher. And so I'm that type. And I think the best way you learn is by hearing your music.
Yeah. Because
the information, if you take it very seriously and you write something you care about and you're committed to, and then it comes back to you through a good performance by good players, the information that you get out of that is far higher than anything I can say.
Yeah. So I gather you certainly do a lot there at Bard to enable your students to hear their pieces.
That's right. That's right.
But for less advanced students, is that really the secret? Is just making sure that they're writing something?
No,
that
starting at day one. Yeah.
it has to be heard, played.
They get to play. I have the conservatory students who take composition. It's a required subject.
Oh, you mean even not non-composers? You mean?
Right.
Uh-huh.
To get on the other side of the page and look at what that does is it educates them to look at the page that they play by Beethoven or Brahms and start questioning, well, that's a piano. I wonder why that's a piano.
Right.
That by having to make the page, they have a different relationship to the page and to composers, because then they see the challenge of putting a piece together. So I've had many performer students change their attitude towards composers and towards Beethoven and the dead composers also.
I hope they've become nicer, at least to the living ones, if not to the dead ones. Have they become more tolerant?
Oh, yeah, they do.
They do. Okay.
Because now they're much more empathetic
Sure.
to what it means to be a composer.
You're kind of from the Hudson Valley, aren't you? Weren't you like born in New Rochelle or someplace like that, or?
Oh yeah, I was born in New Rochelle. Yeah.
But with a little day trip to Bolivia for some years there, is that right?
9 years to South America. Yeah.
From what age to what age?
9 to 18.
Wow, and I know you've always attributed your incredible percussive sensibility to those years, right? What was the story?
I'm basically a Latina, a closet Latina.
Right.
I love the Latinos.
And your nanny when you lived there, what was this thing that? Tell us the story, because it's a great story.
Okay. I was taken out of this very comfortable environment in Larchmont, New York, and thrown into La Paz, Bolivia environment.
And was your
way up in the mountains?
Was your dad a mining engineer or something?
He was a geologist, mining engineer.
A geologist.
And he got a job there. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I learned the language very fast, Spanish, because it was survival time. I was put into a school, and I learned how to dance. It's a dancing culture, you know. I'm a good dancer, so I got into that right away, and I had a nanny, babysitter who was like very young. She was like 18 or something, and she was very pretty, and she was always flirting and looking for guys, you know. So she would take me to these festivals, the Inca festivals, that celebrated every Saint's Day, which was about every 3 days.
Right, they have a lot of saints.
It was an excuse for a party, you know. And it was great. You know, they have these colorful dancing Inca women with the colorful skirts, and they'd have a band, and she would drop me off at the band, and they would throw me a maraca or a drum or a castanet or something, and I'd be wailing away with the band, and she would be off dancing with the guys. It was a win-win situation.
That's fantastic. And so that's how you developed your sensitivity to percussion, right? Is that?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's where it started. Yeah.
And so was that really your only away from America time? Did you spend other time?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That was it. Other than that, you've pretty much been a New Yorker your whole life. Is that right? Or?
Yes.
Except for your time in St. Louis. Did you ever live in St. Louis, or you just?
Oh yeah, I did. I lived there for 3 years.
Right, when you worked with the orchestra.
That was a very interesting experience.
And you were composer.
That was my first orchestra.
Right, you were the composer in residence there with Slatkin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Slatkin took a big chance with me.
But obviously a good one. He
based on Sequoia.
Right. Well, he could tell you had it, whatever it is, you had it.
He took that piece and loved it and played it all over the place, including Europe.
Right.
And then he said, I want you to be, before that, he said, I want you to be a composer in residence with St. Louis. And I wrote him and I said, I don't think that's a great idea because
I like the way you're so self-effacing.
I only have one piece.
Well.
And I don't feel comfortable with the orchestra yet. And he said, I'll help you.
That's really nice.
How to write for orchestra. And he took a big risk with me.
Yeah, but you wrote didn't you write Silver Ladders during that time? Or
yes.
And other orchestra pieces?
Concerto for Orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a 30-minute piece. It was commissioned by New York, St. Louis, and Chicago.
Right.
I mean, talk about challenge.
Pressure.
I got shingles from that experience.
Well, at least there's a vaccine now, so that's good for shingles. Yeah, but I guess you've had it, so it's okay.
But see, Leonard was the kind of conductor who loved composers like you do, and he also knew them, and he knew, like you do, what he liked. There are very few conductors who have that kind of knowledge and that kind of actual commitment to, I like this composer, or I like this music. Mostly it's about this Brahms symphony or that Beethoven symphony, you know. So, I mean, he and you are very special in that way, well, that you have real opinions that are based on knowledge and working with younger composers and older composers, very different styles. And so I applaud him and you for that, really.
Well, that's very kind. We've sometimes done programs around your music where we've let you kind of curate them, and I've always asked you, like, well, who would you like on your program with you of the dead white European males? And well, I know you have many wonderful composers you love, that you seem often to come back to Beethoven and Stravinsky, and I was just wondering, I mean, your music certainly has elements that are shared with them, particularly the rhythmic vitality, but what is it about those two particular composers that you're so drawn to?
Well, first of all, they have different strengths, but I think it's the what I call the dynamic, motivated structure. I learned that from Beethoven. Actually, Beethoven is a genius in that respect. That the way he goes from place to place is pulled, it's motivated, and then inside of that constant going somewhere, strong narrative, he's got risks that he takes all over the place, but the risks become part of the package. He doesn't just throw them in; they walk into the room, but then they become part of the music.
Say what
hard thing to do.
Say that you call it again. A motivated. What do you call it?
A motivated dynamic. See, what I like about Beethoven and Stravinsky is that they're dynamic. They're dramatic. I'm not too good with the subtler composers.
Are there other favorites that you also gravitate to all the time, or is it really those two are your high watermark there?
Well, Tchaikovsky also has the dramatic structure too.
Oh, I do love him too.
And he pulls it over a much bigger landscape, which is absolutely mind-boggling how he does that.
And what I find so funny about Tchaikovsky is, scholars for years have dismissed his larger sense of architecture, and I think he's architectural the way Beethoven is in terms of larger structure. It's extraordinary.
Exactly.
And he really plots it out.
Oh man, he just keeps pulling that mountain forward, and it gets bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
He's amazing.
He is.
And Stravinsky has this, I'm a big word with my students is profile. His profiles are so clearly etched, like Copland, actually. It's very clean cut and very clear, etched. So the memory of them is very clear.
Yeah, your music absolutely has that. When you say that, it sounds just like a description of your music to me. It's so wonderfully etched.
Thank you. Really?
I think
I feel like I'm in the mud here, like trying to get to the profile.
I think it's so funny that you're so. I don't know if you're insecure or self-effacing or what, because you're such a great creative artist. What's the deal with that? I mean, not to get too psychological. Is that just? Are you?
Yeah, I'm my worst enemy, worst critic.
Uh-huh.
I took me years and years and years to get out from under that laser thing, that's looking at as you're writing.
Well, I hope you finally learned the most important lesson, which is stop listening to yourself. That's the lesson.
Years.
But
composing.
I know I've been very afraid of it, I must say. I always say that, I know so many people who feel this need in their belly to create art, and so if I don't feel that unbelievably propulsive physical need, why would I compose? I'm sort of the trying to be the helper.
Because it would be another way into music. for
Right.
you.
Well, that's
And
true.
I would start, if you do it, start with a solo line, like a solo violin or solo clarinet. Start with something very simple. You should do that because no, I'm telling you, because you have so much invested in composers, and you know so many. You have such a huge repertoire to draw from of sound and style and everything. I think you would do a terrific job, actually.
Well, I'll have to call you back for some guidance, though. But that's okay. Didn't you do that with Charles Warren? You were often asking him for advice, or yeah?
Who, Charles Warren?
Charles Warren, early on? No, it wasn't Warren.
No.
Oh, huh?
No, well, we smoked pot together.
Oh, you did. So with Sequoia, who did you ask for advice with Sequoia?
I took it to Bill Schumann.
Oh, huh?
And he made some remark that crushed me about the piano not being heard. That was the last time I asked for any advice.
Oh. Well, that's probably just as well. Because I always feel that, that's true about composers having conviction. You have to believe, right? You have to believe in it.
Or you just don't want any.
Or you don't.
Tell you what to do.
Well, I suppose since you had your own internal voice going, you had enough criticism as it was, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
well,
right.
that's good.
But getting back to the performers, I had in my birthdays, my big birthdays, 60, 70, 75, I had performers write pieces for me for that birthday.
How
And
wonderful.
they were all like you. Oh, I can't do this. I have no talent for this. And oh, it's too hard. And kicking and screaming. And I kept saying, it's just a little birthday thing, 5-minute thing. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? Oh, well, it's, especially a couple of them. But they turned out some really interesting pieces because they had good instincts and they had tremendous experience with playing and playing music.
Right.
I knew they could do it.
Well,
I knew they would turn up something.
Well, we'll try
and
to.
Your belief in living composers is really extraordinary. It really is.
Well, I won't lose that.
We thank you for that.
Well, and I send all my love to you and Jeff, and I hope you stay safe and healthy. And we've got a CD coming out of yours, of your music, which I know you're waiting for because it should have been out by now. We've got it all done and in the can, so that's coming out in the next year. And we'll see you many more times because we were supposed to do duets on the first concert that got canceled because of this stupidity. So we'll have to reprogram that and do it as soon as we can.
Great.
Okay. Sending you love.
To you and my love to the orchestra.
Thank you. Thanks for chatting with me. Talk to you soon.
Bye bye. Bye bye.